Hello, everybody. This is Founder Leroon, and I am working with Fantasy Grounds Unity, the latest version as of 5/21/21, so May 21st, 2021. I'm hoping that all of you have time to follow along. If you want to ask questions, just ask in the chat. I'm going to be going through some basics in the map tools. I'm going to keep doing this until I get it figured out, and hopefully you guys will figure it out as you go along and you watch videos with me. Basically, I'm creating a module to help teach the community, and the best way to do that is to learn it myself. So as I go along, I'm going to stumble through a few things, but I have a kind of an idea of what I need to do. I'm going to take and put this map tools class together for the rest of the community and help pass this knowledge down to everybody. So if you learn something here, hopefully you'll pass it on to somebody else, and so on and so forth. So that's my goal for the stream. The other goal is to obviously get used to the map tools and to teach myself how to use them as well. So always learning. I don't know everything. I just know enough to be dangerous. So the first thing I'm going to do is add some images to this module that I'm building. And when I say this module, I'm talking about Fantasy Grounds, and I have a story entry here. And what I have here are some, basically these are chapters for a new module I'm working on. This goes into line of sight, and it talks about brushes and the images, and then you have the paint tools, line of sight, effects, masking. There's some grid tools here that comes inside of the map tools. I have a couple different categories here, so I'm going to go to this Fantasy Grounds College mapping course. And this is a module I'm working on effectively. And what I'm doing now is adding the last final bits of this. So I'm going to be adding some credits at the end for Angela Maps and for Game Tile Warehouse. They have both graciously donated maps for this course. And I'm going to be actually building a line of sight on one of them today and some of the other features. There is a chapter under for the grid tools, and we're going to touch on that. And let's see. Oh, and the adding lights to map tokens. We're going to do some of that. And I'm going to take some brand new fresh maps, import them, and then I'm going to eventually link them into the module. So when I export it, it's going to be part of this module. And we've been given sole permission by both cartographers to use their product. We can distribute the module, whatever it takes to get people taught. If you're wondering what theme I'm using, it's Sir Mott's Magnificent Darkness theme. This was suggested to me by Lady Shell. It's on the forums. Basically, it's just like a dark theme, which I kind of like it. So let's get started. So first of all, I'm going to go to my Assets folder. And in the Assets folder, you have a few different options up here. You have a token option, you have a portrait, and then you have images. So I'm going to go ahead and add some images to my campaign folder. If you put it in the data folder, the items will be available for all of your different game sessions, but they will not be part of the module. So you have to have a campaign folder to put them in. So I'm going to double click here. Now I have a folder called Donated Maps. I have figures and photos for the educational part. There's some lighting figures and handouts, and then there's some logos here. So I have the FGC banner, which I have to figure out a use for it. And then in the Donated Maps, I have these two maps, one gridded and one not gridded. So there's one that we're going to use. The ungridded version is going to be used for when we teach the classes. And then the other one that doesn't have a grid, we'll use this one, and then the other one will be the final result. So now I'm going to add actually some more maps. So there's a folder button down on the bottom here. I'm going to click on that, and I don't think it shows in the stream, but I am opening up the back end of my computer. And I have a downloads folder in which I have basically downloaded the map tool images that I'm going to use to teach. So I have a basically a subdirectory that I'm going to put these in, and it's going to be the donated maps. So I'm just going back to my downloads folder, and I'm going to pull those over once I locate them. So I have a logo that Kris gave me for his Game Tile Warehouse, so I'm going to put that in the logos folder. And then he gave me 2 separate maps that are, well, actually 3. One is with a grid, one is without, and then one has no grid at all or shadows. So I'm going to go ahead and grab and drag those and put them in the donated maps folder. So you're not seeing this on the back end. I'm just dragging files over, and I'm going to close my images down. Now I'm back to the assets here in Unity. So all you have to do when you add content, if you're live like this and you're already booted up and everything, you hit the refresh folder assets, and what it will do is whatever you added to Fantasy Grounds will now appear. So just remember that whenever you add tokens or anything to these asset folders, you need to hit the refresh button. That's important, or they won't show up. So now that I have those in the campaign folder, and if I go to campaign or images, I'm going to double click here, and that brings up the folders that I made myself so they can keep organized. And I'm going to the donated maps, and I'm going to bring up this Game Tile Warehouse with the grid as a preview of it. And then there's also a no grid version, which we're going to use for our classes when we start getting that going. And then there's one that has a shadow on it, and then that's one I might show to kind of illustrate that Fantasy Grounds does that now. So if you're making a map for Fantasy Grounds, you don't really have to put shadows on it so much as before. You might put a little teeny bit, but you don't really need to get too detailed with shadows anymore. So now it's time to start looking at this map, and I'm going to also discuss the tokens as well a little bit. So in your campaign folder, you also have token section, and then there will be a campaign folder. I have Angela maps in there right now. So I will make a token for Kris from Game Tile Warehouse, and I'm going to put his token in there as well. So these are kind of going to represent the artists that have supported us. And I would use Roll Advantage token stamp to do it. I didn't take the liberty to do this ahead of time, but I will do it. And I think that in doing so, that in another video or past videos that I've done, I would illustrate that process. So you just create the image or the token, put it in your tokens folder, have it sized to maybe 100 by 100, maybe 200 by 200 at the most, and then refresh, and it will show up in here. So that it's in the token area. So I'll go back to the images for now. I don't want to do a live stream with creating tokens when I'm talking about the map tools. So I'm going to go to this campaign folder again. And what I want to do here is I'm going to add these images to the image section in the module. So right now I have all these images here. So I'm going to select the group that I want them in. So this is going to be the Fantasy Grounds mapping course. So the lighting one talks specifically about lighting, but I'm going to actually use the one for the course. And this has a bunch of images that are used throughout the module. And down at the bottom here are the ones from Angela Maps. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the donated maps folder. Now to add an asset to this, you can drag individual files, or you can click this import files up on top here on the images area and grab these if you want. I'm just going to grab them individually and drag them over. But if I hadn't already imported all these, you can click create from campaign assets. And that would pull in all of your art from your images folder. So if you click on create campaign assets, it would say yes, you want to do that, and you go ahead and hit yes. It'll give you some errors if you already have the existing images. So that's kind of the reason why I wasn't going to do it, but I'll go ahead and show that. So now all of the different artwork that's in your asset folder will become part of this group here. So now that I have that, I have this Kris's Game Tile Warehouse thing. There's his banner. I have his, let's go with the gridded version of his map. And right now it's kind of small, so I'm going to close the images and maps and the assets. And I'm going to resize the window so that you can see what's going on here. So I'm going to go ahead and take that and stretch it out to probably like about so. And I'm going to also take and bring this up. So you can scroll in with your mouse and then it'll bring it up. But if you want to center it, you just drop down the tool up here, which is up in the top right corner. It's toggle toolbar. And then you click on zoom to fit, and that will fit the map to whatever you need. So now the next thing to do is the first step after you've organized your files and you have them in the right folders and such. What I'm going to do here now is I'm going to take this and turn this into a usable tool for playing, but you still have to draw. Basically, you have to draw the grid. So what I'm going to do is take and grab this grid over here, which is a tool. And it's good to know the sizes here. So I'm going to start with 50, but if it looks too small, we can adjust it. So this is the most important first step, is to put a grid on the map. So even though it has a painted one, you have to put one on here. Another important thing is to lock the image. So I'm going to go ahead and lock the image. That way you don't accidentally move it. Now I'm going to take this grid and I'm just going to click on the map anywhere. And then I'm going to turn on the toggle invisibility, or visibility, I should say. And as you can see, this is already a little bit too big. So what I want to do is probably go half this size. And that's still a little bit crazy. So let me try 35. Yeah, that's closer. So then you nudge the map over. It looks like maybe 40. And that's why it helps to know the actual how many pixels per square, because you're going to be fighting this if you don't. And this is good to show during this particular tutorial because this is something you're going to come up against. So you can see the grid's not lining up because they don't have the correct proportions. So let me try 38. That's probably a lot closer. And you can play around with this all day until you get it right. But sometimes the squares are actually not square. And that's a problem. So that, yeah, 38 looks pretty good. That's pretty close. And how you check this, and then you have a little nudge thing here where you can actually just incrementally move it. See, now I can see already that it's going to be off in other places. So this is what I'm saying about knowing the actual, see, it's way off over here. So when you get a map, it's better to get one that does not already have a grid on it. And this is the reason why. So it's probably like 38.5 or something weird. And it's one of those things that you have to get used to when you use Fantasy Grounds, is to know the scale of your actual map. So I didn't get the scale. I didn't ask. I just kind of just grabbed the map and kind of went with it. But it is something that's important to keep in mind. And you see it's way off out here. So basically, the moral of that story is to make sure you know the dimensions of the actual squares. So I have this down. It looks like it's going to be a little bit too big or a little bit too small. So it's a matter of really knowing what you're getting. So I think 37.8 might be the thing. It looks a lot closer, I'll tell you that. Yeah, see, it's getting better. So it's obviously somewhere in between there, maybe 37.5. I don't know. Excuse me. Let's see. So move that over a little bit. Yeah, it looks a little big. But 37.5. Try that. And I have the aspect ratio locked, so if you move one side, it's going to move the other. So you can turn that off, but if you do that, that means that your map is not square. So that's pretty close. Now, if you're having to do this a lot, that's probably not a good thing. But here, we got the pretty close. So I gotta say, it's probably, let's see, 7. Let's try that. So you can fight this for a long time until you get it right. It's kind of not worth it if you are, and especially if you're in a hurry and you're getting ready to play. So this is about as close as I'm going to get. That's it. So it was 37.4 was the actual number. It looks fairly square, even down in here. It's off a little bit. So I think the 37.5 was probably closer. 37.5 cents. Yeah, that was a lot closer. So it's just a matter of getting to know your materials. When you grab random maps off the internet, that's when you start out. And this is actually made for FGC, and I think I'm going to use this as a good illustration as to why I want to use quality maps and not just find any old thing. So Kris made this for us. I told him don't worry too much about the grid because this is just going to be the finished product. This is not going to be, a map for any sort of published material that's going to be sold. So that's pretty close. So we got down to the minute fractions here. Yeah, so we're really close. So the next thing we can do here is take and change the color. So I kind of want to grab the colors from the natural background. So I'm going to grab some of this green. So you have the color dropper here, and I'm just going to run over some of this green patches here. Look for something kind of light shows up. There we go. So there's kind of a light green, and I'm going to turn the opacity down a little bit so it's not so obnoxious. And you have that black grid on there anyway, so it's going to be rather, it's going to be a little bit off, and then there we go. So we just recentered it up, and if you check the opposite end, see how far off it is. Yeah, it's pretty close. I mean, we're like within just a tiny fraction off. So that's really good. Okay, so now it's time to start looking at some more of the map tools. So that's the first thing you want to do is put the grid on. You can change the color and the opacity so it's not so obnoxious. And you can play around with it and get it set, but it takes a while if you don't know the actual number. I think I'm going to write that down because when I do this class, I'm not going to be fumbling around looking for the number. I'll know it and I can get closer. I'll be able to illustrate it in a more professional, trained manner. So it's 37.5 on this grid here. Now, some are 50, some are 100. Just depends on the quality of the map and where you get the map. There are some websites and different different sales areas where you can buy assets, and it'll tell you in the description of what it actually uses. So that's that. Now the next thing is I'm going to take and start looking at the map tool. So right now I'm in the grid tool for the map tools. There's the mask, there's lighting, there's the line of sight, you have effects, there's a paintbrush, there's a layer tool, and then there's the play button. So this is the button that you're going to use when you're actually playing in Fantasy Grounds. So when you're using this, you want to be in play mode, and you can enable the character vision. You can turn on line of sight. You can enable the lighting. So these are some of the things that you're going to be toggling when you're playing and when you're developing. So this is kind of an important area to understand. These are previews and turning things on and off. Look, we got a bear skin rug. What do you know? Thanks, Kris. Nice touch. So yeah, we always have a running joke about it having a bear skin rug. Okay, so that is basically the grid. So now the first step is to put in your line of sight. So you want to do that first before you place any lights or anything. So I'm going to go to the wall tool. And usually the first thing I'll start with is the windows and the doors. So it looks like we have a door here. And this is actually kind of a secret door or a illusionary wall. So we'll do that. We have a pit, which is probably like a trap. And then we have a chair and a chest, it looks like, or a table with some candles on there. So I might put the candle effect on there. And then outside we have a fireplace. So we'll have lights for those. And then we have a little bit of terrain, so we can do that too with the terrain tool. So, and then we have water too. So we'll handle the way that how we do water too. So what we're going to do is start making the windows and the doors. So when you are doing that, you want to be in the wall tool if you're going to trace the line of sight occluders around. But in this case, I always do the windows and the doors first. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to the door tool. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and select the rectangle. So one of the things that people fight with the most is the selection tool. And that's, at least that's what I fight with. So whenever you want to move something or change the position or select a point, you need to be in the select tool. If you're still in the drawing mode, you will draw images or you will extend a line that you don't want to extend. So if you're in the middle drawing a line, either double click or hit escape and then click over to select, and then you can move the item. So right now I'm going to switch back to the rectangle tool, and I am in the door tool. So there's the door tool and the rectangle. All I'm going to do is just kind of trace on the outside of this. And you want the doors as wide as you can without looking too crazy. So I think that's pretty good right there. And that's basically how simple it is to make a rectangular door. Now you're not always going to have that option, but that's how it's done. Now the same thing with windows. So you want to click on the window tool, and I'm on the rectangle because these windows are fairly rectangular. So I'm going to go ahead and make a So they took away Control Z, which is your undo, and I don't know what happened, but it was delayed. But I'm going to go ahead and hit delete. But if you really wanted to, since it's already fairly square, you can take these corners and reposition them where you want them. So you don't have to necessarily delete it. I can go ahead and reuse this rectangle square-like thing. There we go. So then I just touch it up a little. Yeah, there we go. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you double click on one of the points, it actually allows you to move the whole shape. So if you're off a little bit on your shape, you can do. Now all that does is takes all the points in a connected shape here. And then if you want to, you just single click and that takes you onto a single point. So single click onto a point, double click to get all the points that are attached to that line. So if you have an entire drawing, it may not select all the lines. It depends on where you stopped and where you drug your points. But all you have to do is kind of zoom in and you can kind of get an idea of where you want to place these. You can also, you can use your, sometimes people use a Wacom tablet. I don't know how that works, but basically do that with that. Some of the drawing anyways. So there we go. So that's a window. And now hopefully I'll do it right this time. So I'm in the drawing tool for the rectangle and I'm still in the window. So I'm going to take this. It's a lot cleaner if you can do this. And let's just say you wanted to go back. You're like, I'm not happy with this. So you go to selection mode, double click on all of those, and then it will highlight all the points and hit delete. And that's how you get rid of that whole section. So I'm going to go back to the square tool, rectangle tool. Got to remember, back and forth between these two. So this will now just be drawn in like a rectangle, like I intended to in the first place. There we go. So now we have other type of data, which is this, which is going to be, we're going to call it an illusionary wall, but basically light can't pass through this. It's like a curtain, basically, is how the illusionary wall works. So you don't see through it, but you can move through it. And I'm just going to do this because you're going to be able to move through the curtain, but not really able to see through it. And that's what this tool does. So I make sure I'm in the square drawing tool, a rectangle, and I'm in the illusionary wall. And this could just be a section of wall that's illusory. So you don't have to have a curtain drawn here. I did this, or I requested this so that we can show it in the class. So there's the illusionary wall. And now we have some other data types like this pit. So I'm going to go to the pit tool, which is this, looks like this little guy that's falling down. And I'm going to just drag this around it, and there we go. So there's a pit. And if you need something that's not square, like if it's rounded, then you just hold down the Alt key and then you can freehand it. And now what I'm going to do is the terrain. So that'll be the last step here. So the terrain tool just allows you to block light from passing through trees and rocks and stuff. It also would determine whether the item that you're doing is over your head or over a normal person's head, over 6 feet. So I would go ahead and trace that around this rock. So if you look, the rock here, this face would probably be visible, but these top two probably not so much. So this has 3 faces to it, maybe even another one underneath. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the terrain tool, and in this case the line tool, because I don't have a perfect square or circle. And I'm just going to click on a couple points. You don't need a 50,000 points. It's one of the mistakes I made early on as I was clicking on every little nook and cranny, and that's not the intent of the map tool. It creates more data, so in other words, it messes your performance up a little when you have too many data points. So even there, I've got too many. Anyhow, so this is a big rock that you can't see through. And then for trees, depending on the type of tree, like I think these two are kind of a lower hanging trees. So you could use an ellipse tool and just go right around there. So let's try that. So I'm going to go to the ellipse tool, and all you have to do is single click and drag outwardly until you grab most of the tree. It's not that bad. And then this is the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and do this. Now, if you want to move it a little bit, positioning-wise, you go to the selection tool. So make sure you're out of the drawing tool, double click, and that selects all the different points. And then I just grab the center of it and move it. And the same thing over here, if I double click, I can recenter this where I want. Now, if you want this to be imperfect, like you don't want this to be a perfectly round circle, in the selection tool, I can select one of these points and drag them out from here. So it's actually a little bit more contoured for the tree as opposed to a perfect circle. So this could be something that you could do to start, just to kind of get a rough idea of the shape that you're looking for. And then you can take these points and drag them out so they're not as perfect as you would with the circle. So you can take this and kind of push these out a little bit if you need to. And there you go. So you don't have to have a perfect circle. You can mess around with these. So come out here and here a little bit, and just kind of give it some texture and not so much linear or cylindrical. And you could adjust things in and out if you need to. This will make this look a lot better. Okay, so that's pretty much it for that. So that's your terrain tool. So we did the 2 rocks, and we did the 1 rock and 2 trees. And now I'm going to go over to this apple tree. And I'm going to do the same thing, but at this time I'm just going to go to the drawing tool, and I'm just going to put some points in here. So it's roughly the shape of the tree without having to draw a circle. You can do it like this if you want. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. I double clicked on that last point to get out of the drawing. If you don't, it'll keep dragging the line with it. So that's basically that. And if you want to draw a contour of, if you're going to be in the water, it would be tough to see up here on the cliff. So you could make the water a pit, and if you fall down that cliff or down this little waterfall, you're down in the water. So you could do that. So I might make a free-handed pit down here. So in other words, if you fall off this cliff, the pit will make it so where if you're down here, you can't see up. So we might do that. So this would be a good time to do the water if that was the case. Now, if you notice there's a little bush out here. Now, this bush isn't big enough to put the line of sight to block. So that's that. So we have a couple windows. We have a door. We have an illusionary wall or a curtain. We have a pit, and then we have these different terrain features out here. So hopefully that helps you a little bit with just the basic line of sight thing. So you have to have that kind of in place before you start messing with all the other tools. It's important to have that defined. That way it doesn't get broken and they're not on the wrong layers and that sort of thing. So make sure that you're able to take a look at that and use those tools in a certain way and order so it makes your life easier. So now the last final thing is I'm going to be in the line tool, and I actually can use the rectangle tools here because this is a fairly square area. So I'm going to do that. Much easier than trying to draw all the lines. So I'm going to go ahead and take the rectangle tool, and I'm going to be in the wall mode. And I'm just going to go in roughly about a little bit in from center on the map itself. And I'm just going to draw this around until it forms this actual square here, a rectangle. Looks pretty good. So now you have that room. And now what I'll do is I'll actually draw in some of these tools, but like this can be probably done as a room. So I'm going to go ahead and draw this. I'm going to get really close and just draw this. This is like a secret room. And then just kind of roughly size it to the same shape here. And what you want to do with this is I'm going to go to the selection tool, and you can actually drag this back and create a point here. So if you drag this on, you can actually connect it with this. And you can see it's not connected, so I want it to connect. And then I do the same thing with this on the bottom, is take that and connect it as well. So if you want to clean that up too, you can, because you want it to be part of this other map. So I take this corner and drag it. There we go. So those 2 points are now connected. So that's the best way, I think, to connect these together. And now what you can do is you can actually you can delete this line in here, but I'm not going to do that just yet. We'll clean that up in a little bit. And then for individual lines, you're just going to have to draw them. And it's better to draw over than under. So in other words, when you're trying to intersect, it's better just to go to the line tool and just grab a point that's right close or beyond, and then just drag it out until you get to where you want it to go. And you see, if you don't double click, it's going to keep drawing. So you either hit escape or you double click. So you have this little tail here. So all you have to do is go to the selection mode, click on the little tail, and then click the delete button, and it will delete that line. Now if you double click, it'll delete the whole line. So that's how you deal with intersecting lines. It makes it easier on you. And that would be the same thing over here. So I'm just going to draw a couple lines in here to finish this room out. So I want to go ahead and make sure I can see everything. And I'm going to go to the line tool and start at the edge over here and draw all the way to where I go overlap this line, and then double click, and that gets rid of the drawing aspect, or at least it escapes out of drawing. And then I'm going to click beyond this line and go down to this point out here and double click. There we go. So then once you got all your lines in place, now it's time for your cleanup. So the cleanup process isn't too bad. So first I'm going to start with these windows and doors. So the recommended method is to be in the line tool in the wall mode, and you just draw through the door or the portal. I'm going to go ahead and left click and just click 2 points. Double click here, so I will make that third point, which ends the drawing mode basically. And then do the same thing here. So you just draw, click, click, and then double click out of it. And I'm going to do the same thing with this here. I'm going to just drag this over. And that way you'll be able to delete these lines. And then if you were going to, you can just single click here and hit delete. but you have to be in the selection tool. See, I was already off, and I double clicked instead of single. So there we go. So you do that to clean up these overlaps. It's better to overlap than to underlap, because then you have to go and drag it and all this stuff. So it's easier just to delete the excess than it is to fall short. And if you're not long enough here, like, you can single click this and draw it out a little bit more if you want. And then if you want to reposition it a little, I'm going to take this and drag it to the left a little bit. So it's just up to you how you want to do it. But it is important that you're able to master these little edits and skills. So I'm still drawing lines through the doors and such. So here's the last one. So here's a door. So I'm in the line tool and I'm in the wall mode. You got to make sure you know where you're at before you start drawing. And now I'll hit escape, and there we go. So now I'm going to go back to the select mode, and I'm going to go and clean up all the stuff I don't like. So I'm going to grab and just left click and drag, and it will select all these points, and I hit delete. And that gets rid of the intersecting line. Same here, you could get rid of one of these lines by just dragging point through here. So if I go back to the line mode and I just click here and here, that makes this intersecting area. So I'm just going to go back to selection mode, and I'm just going to highlight these and hit delete. And that gets rid of that extra line there. Same thing with these things here. When I want to get rid of these extra lines, I'm just highlighting those 3 points, hit delete. It's that simple. And the reason I did it like this is systematic, so you're not switching back and forth from the tools. So here I'm going to draw the line through here, the line that I don't want. And then go back to the selection tool and highlight these and delete. So that's how you get rid of the intersecting lines. Just draw a line over it, and it should get, if you get all the points, it should delete it. Do I have any more tails to get rid of? Not really, so I'll just finish these windows up. The windows are pretty cool. They allow light through, but you can't move through them unless you open them. They're pretty cool. Almost like a door, but not quite. Okay, so there we go. So that's how you get rid of the lines in between something. And I got rid of that extra line. Now you have an extra point. I don't think it's a problem, but if you have to, you can click on that and just click remove selected point. And that gets rid of it. And I would do the same up here. So if you have a point that you don't want, and it's not critical, it's not at a juncture, you can click it on, single click the little minus button, and it will remove that point. You got to be careful, make sure it's not part of a major intersection. Those are just extra lines that are in the middle. And if you zoom in really far, you can see these are all connected. Once in a while, when you try to hand draw it and you don't land on the actual square, you can see that it's not connected, and you'll have to connect it. That's why it's better to draw over instead of undershooting it, because then you have to check it, and then you get bleeding through and everything else. So there's your line of sight on the actual building. So to check that, we're going to go to the play mode, and we're going to go to enable line of sight. And then when you're in the map tools, you need to be in play mode. And then you would turn on disable and enable lighting. And then also enable the character preview. You can see there's nothing there because that's the character view. This is more of the game master view. So I'm going to grab a token. So I'm going to go to the party sheet or the combat tracker. And I have Angela Maps up here. This is our test character. So I'm going to drag and drop her token outside. And she has an effect. It's light. It's a torch light. So that's why she's able to see. And if I hit Control P, that's a toggle. So I can see what she sees right now. Right now it looks dark. and there's no really good ambient light. If there is, it's dark. It's nighttime, so that's why it's so dark. She has torch light on her, but if I want to change that, I can go to the effects on the combat tracker, and I can double click and delete the torch. So now in player mode, she can't see anything. So what I'm going to do is go over to the effects, which is this little running man, or it could be a wand, depends on the theme. And you have these 6 main lighting effects. So instead of a torch, I'm going to give her a lantern. And I'll drag and drop that onto her token, or onto her combat tracker entry. And that gives her the lantern. Looks like it has a little bit more radius to it, which is cool. And then on this line here, I'm just going to double click and delete the one I don't need. And you can toggle this on and off by clicking on the on and off button over here on the left. It's kind of hard to see it, but it's right in here on the left of the effect. So you can turn it on or off as needed. It's a toggle. And then that's basically the lighting. And then when you take possession of the token, you're going to see the light. And then also, when you are in this mode here, which is your line of sight mode, you can disable line of sight and the lighting if you want. That turns on or off the ambient lighting. And then you can enable or disable player vision so that you can see what the players see. I would leave that off when you're running a game, and then just hit Control P once in a while. That doesn't hold it on. It just makes it so where you can preview what they're looking at. For the most part, you want to be able to see everything. It's kind of grayed out, which is good because that shows that, this is the area that's not in focus. And then you have your terrain, of course. So now when she gets up to the door, so let's just say she's a player, and I have the player map on now, and I'm in play mode. When she gets up to the door, if it's not locked, she can open it. And if you look, the light from the lantern is spilling out into the house. So that's cool. And the lantern light is also spilling out through the windows because they're open, or the shades aren't shut. And the light is spilling out, and as you can see, it's a little dimmer. So this light here is dim. It's falling off, and it's going through the house, through the window, and outside. So if I move her back, that light goes away. So if I move her in, as she gets closer, she can't move through that window, technically. So if for some reason she was able to, you would hit Shift and drag her over. So you hold the Shift button down, and you drag them through. You can drag them through walls that way, too. So if you're the game master, you can hit Shift and drag and allow them to do that. And where that would come in handy is this pit. So if she falls in that pit, look, she can't see anything, really. Really hard to see. So she can't move outside of that pit. In order for that to happen, if you're going to move her out somehow, you have to hold Shift and drag her out. So that's how that works. And this curtain thing, it allows her to move through, but the light doesn't pass through. So right now there's probably just a little bit of ambient moonlight in there, which I'll have to get rid of that. But nonetheless, see, I can't move her outside of that. I have to go through the window, through the door, and around the pit, and out here. If you try to drag her through the walls, it doesn't work. You have to hold Shift. So that is basically the way that, how can you give an NPC dark vision? It is not in the options. It is, but you just drag, this is an NPC, by the way, up here on the top where the effects are. You have candle, lantern, spell light, torch, spell darkness, and lamp. So you just drag and drop that onto your NPCs. It's that simple. You can also toggle it on or off in the combat tracker, and you can even get fancier, and there's some more code that you put on there that would be for like flickering light or pulsing light or whatever. But that's how you do it, is just from this effects thing. Or you can type it, light, 30, lantern. So once you know what the syntax is, you can type it by hand as well. So light 30, dark vision, or light 30, whatever these say, is what you would type out. And then the 30 obviously is the range. So that's how you add. This is an NPC, but it's not a player. So So that is how you add it. So NPC dark vision would just be a matter of you dragging that effect over. Hopefully that answers your question. Also, if you list it in an NPC stat block area, so if I double click on Angela, she's an NPC, and there's a senses area, I believe, where you can type it. So if you unlock this and you come in here where it says senses, you type in dark vision and then you relock the position, and then when you put it on the combat tracker, it should go on automatically. So that is basically how you would do NPCs. Now, if the NPC is locked and you can't edit it, you have to make a copy of the NPC and then edit it. So that's how you would handle it, so you don't have to do it manually every time. So there is a way to add it to the NPCs if they need it. Now, most creatures have it on there, so it should anyways. And if it's on there correctly and you drag it onto the combat tracker, it should work. And if it doesn't, then there's a bug or the spelling or something wrong. Also notice that the duration is 3,600 rounds, so that lantern's going to burn for quite a long time. Hopefully that helps you answer your question. Yep. Gotcha. So that's how you would do the automatically if you have it on the stat block, or you can just drag over the effect from the effects. That's kind of a pain when you got a bunch of them. Okay, so that's her with her lantern. I'm going to put her back outside for right now. I'm going to disable the player vision so I can see what I'm doing, and I'm going to temporarily enable or disable line of sight. And this is because I'm still working. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and start working on this water effect. So the water is kind of tough to do, but I'm going to go ahead and do that first. So water is actually an overlay effect. So I want to get that one going first, and then I'll add a little fog or something. I don't know. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the effects tool up on top, and I'm going to add an effect, which is right on the very bottom, and it's a blank effects layer. I'm going to go ahead and add water, and you can see the entire map ripples. So what I'm going to do is put a mask on this entire screen, because I don't want to show that on everything. And I'm only going to reveal it around the ocean part here. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm in the reveal area. I'm going to turn down some of the effects because they look a little ridiculous at first. And then I'm going to hit the Alt key and hold it down when I want to freehand. But I'm going to go ahead and just draw this like this for now so I can get a majority of it. And then I'm going to freehand the rest of it. So I'm going to hold down the Alt and just kind of trace around this contour. You don't want to be right up to the edge of the rocks. You want to be kind of close, but not overlapping too much, and you'll see why shortly. And just close it up. It doesn't have to be perfect first time around. That's pretty close. It almost took so if you get too close to the edge, it takes the edge of that of the rocks. You don't want that. It's okay if it's like there, but if it's right on the rock itself, it looks wrong. It makes the rock move, basically. So you want to get really detailed. You zoom in, and you'll have this kind of wavy-like effect. And I'm going to go ahead and come over here and finish it up. So again, I'm going to be holding down the Alt key and just freehanding around. So you don't have to do this in one go. You can do it in little sections, so it's easier on you. There we go. And right here, I'm going to draw this in. And it can overlap, so it's not a big deal. That's why I took a majority of it and made the shape. And then I'm going to draw around this, because I don't want to necessarily grab this water, because this is a different thing here. So this is where it's going to get a little tricky. if you want it to look good and not look so crazy, but I'm going to go ahead and draw around this thing here. So this is where the river or the creek meets the ocean. And then I'm going to grab this and come over here and close the loop out. And as you can see, there's this kind of this transition line. So there's a blur tool now that it kind of blends that in so it's not so drastic. Before we didn't have that. So that kind of helps blend those two surfaces together. And then I'm going to come around this little edge here a little bit more. There we go. Look at that. Okay, so that's the water, and then you can adjust. You can adjust how much you want it. I think about about 5 or so. So I have these knocked way down. And I'll turn the speed up just a hair. So you have this illusion of the water. And I'm going to do the same thing on this river. So I'm going to probably make a new layer instead of, because it'll move the same direction. I don't want that. So I'm going to go back to the effects and I'm going to add another layer. And it's going to be water, but I'm also going to have there's another rippling effect that I want to put on top of it, or under it actually. So I think I'll do that one first. So this one's called Ocean. And it puts a lot of this big distortion on here. I think that'll look pretty good. And then if you want it to like slow down or speed up, you can do that. And then the size, you can turn the size down so it's not so crazy. And then the distortion amount is probably not as much as it was. So this is how you kind of get it, focused. And then I'm going to blur it so it blends in. And I'm going to put the mask on because I don't want it all over the map. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the mask. And then I'm just going to trace inside of the river of where I want that tool to be. So I'm going to go ahead and hold down the Alt key and trace through here. And you don't have to do it in one go. And mainly I just want it for this area here. So I'm going to go, and I don't care if it overlaps the ocean part a little because I want it to blend it in. So this is the part where the water gets faster and it spills out over the ocean. And as you can see, it's a little different, and it's kind of, it's showing both layers, which I didn't want. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that because that's not what I wanted. So I'm going to go ahead and click delete. And this is not what I wanted for this. So I'm going to hide it now. So rather than reveal, I'm going to hide this area. So instead, I'll come back here and I will hide that area. I don't want it part of the waterfall. There we go. Okay, square one. So add another layer. And I don't want water. I wanted that distorted ocean effect. And then I'm going to turn that down so it's not so drastic. And then I want to turn the speed down just a hair. And then the vertical size down a hair so it's not too big. And then I'm going to blur it so that blends it in with the rest of the stuff. And then, of course, put the mask on. Now, I just want to reveal the waterfall, not the ocean. So I'm going to go into the drawing mode, or in this case, selection mode. I'm going to highlight, and I'm just going to come in here and draw out some of this water. And like I said, you don't want to go right to the edge because you'll capture that rock and it won't look right. And I'm going to go through here and do the same thing. And this kind of gives you that motion that you might be looking for when it comes to a river or some kind of moving water. Okay. Then I might do that for out here in the deeper parts of the ocean. So maybe you want it like that. Yeah. So you can put that in little pockets and then blend it. Turn down the distortion. So it kind of gives you the illusion that this stuff is moving. So that's all I'm doing is kind of going through here and kind of getting these areas to move. Now, on top of that, if you were going to, you could put another effect, or so on and so forth. You could even put a color effect. So if you wanted to like darken the ocean a little bit, you could do that. But I'm just going to leave it at that. So that's how you'd put your water in. And then as far as anything else goes, like I was going to make a pit out of the ocean. So in other words, there's really no way down except for if you fall down that waterfall. So what I'm going to do is go back to the line of sight tool, and I'm going to go back to drawing mode, and I'm going to go with pit, which is experimental, and I'm going to draw this in. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just going to be along the contour of the ocean itself and the cliffs. And I'm going to draw around here. There we go. And the only reason I did that is because when you're in play mode, and let's see, and if you fall down in there, so if Angela falls in there, she won't be able to see outside of the ocean there. She'll be pretty much stuck with whatever it is that she has for lighting. And even then, I'd probably have her remove her torch because it's doused. So that's all she would see if she fell. And then I have to hit shift and drag the token out if she gets rescued. So that's how you do another way to use the pit tool. So it's coming right along. So we have some terrain here and such. Now it's time to add the ambient lighting and such. So right now it looks like it's nighttime. So I'm going to temporarily turn off these effects. And I'm just going to go to the lighting, and you hit Control L for preview. And I'm going to go to the lighting mode. And then this little sunshine here is the ambient lighting. So right now it looks like it's dark. That's the ambient color. If you want, you can click this preset, and you can go to moonlight. And that's basically and you can turn it on and off from here as well. And you can cast your shadows or whatever you want to do here. So if you select your preset, your layer, or whatever layer you're working on, and then you can go to sunlight, or you can go to whatever you want. Dusk. So dusk has that glow. So let's go back to play mode, and let's see what it looks like. So here's so there's your sunset. Oh, that looks really nice. And then what you do is when you're in that mode here, you can adjust your shadows. So not necessarily this line of sight, but the shadows themselves. So we got that all on. So I'm going to look what player view looks like. So Control P is, see, that's what they see when they're actually looking. So that's right. And we want to take the ambient light actually and probably remove it from the house. So I need to put a mask inside of the house so that the ambient lighting doesn't go inside. Probably the only where you'd want that is in the inside the windows. I think it does allow that anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and add a mask. So in lighting mode and in the ambient lighting, I want to add a mask. And this is going to be to reveal or to hide. So I'm going to hide this area from the ambient lighting. So I'm going to hide that and this room over here. And now when you turn those back on, Yeah, see, the ambient light doesn't go inside the house anymore. Kind of like the effect of it going through the window, but that's okay. So that's that. And then when you hit Control P, you can see how it affects the... So the indoor must have its own ambient lighting because it's shining out of the window. So to fix that problem, you would have to go in and change that. So if this was on its own layer, you'd have to change the ambient lighting on there. But there's the line of sight. So let's turn that off right now. And I want to go into the light mode itself. And this time I'm going to add the lighting for the different lights that are inside. So if you can see that these are actually live burning lights. So I think I'm going to add the water effect on all of these fiery surfaces. So I'm going to take the water effect to give that a little bit of movement, turn that off, and then I'm just going to unmask this little area. And I'm going to blur the heck out of it because I don't want it to be too much contrast. And I'm just going to take and freehand it by holding down the Alt key and just kind of coming around here and drawing this little area here for the flickering effect. There we go. Now I'm just going to do that with the fires and stuff. So again, I'm holding down the Alt key and just kind of tracing around the contour of this light. The candles will have their own flicker, so I don't need to worry about those. And I'm going to make that illusion over here as well. And then the fireplace. That. So up close, it won't look right, but from a distance, it will. All right, so now that I've added that effect, now I'm going to actually add the light. So I'm in the lighting mode, and I'm going to click on Add Light. So in here, I'll take and I'm going to go ahead and add a light to it, but I want to use a preset. So I think I'm going to use Torch as my preset. And then if I click in the center, it's going to add the torch. And you can change the color. So if I want to make it a little bit more the color of the actual fire, I can run this over here. That changes the color of it, of the flame. So again, I'm going to go to the eyedropper and move this into the fire itself. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Now I need to go back and highlight those and get rid of them. There we go, because I wasn't in selection mode, so it's important to remember that. And while you're in selection mode, you can move it to where you want it. And now I'm just going to play around with the settings until I get like an orangish, a light orange color. There we go. So that'll be the color for that fireplace. And then, like I said, if you wanted to, like these are the lights for here. So I can just click on this, and that would bring the light. Let's see. I want to... Okay. So I'm going to make little lights for these torches. So again, I'm going to create a preset. Let's call these lamps, I guess. And then click on them. And I have to be in light mode, of course. And I want to change the color. And I'm going to click on the eyedropper and get into some of the color of the actual flame. Hit OK. And now when I click, the lighting will match the color of the the flames. That'd be here and here. So that's basically how you place the lights. And if you want to move them, make sure you go to Selection Tool. If you want to kind of recenter them a little bit, that might be a thing that you want to do. That one looks good. What about the one down here? There we go. So there's your lights. So that is how you do it. And then here you have your fireplace light. So I can go ahead and move that. Okay. So I think that takes care of the lighting for the inside. So to check this, we're going to be in play mode. And I'm going to hit Enable Line of Sight. And the lighting tool is on. And then I'm going to hit, let's see. I want to make sure this ambient lighting is on. So it looks like it is. Let's go to this light is on. That's on. That is on. And that is. It's like that's toggling on and off. Okay. So now let's go to the play mode. And there's your mode as the game master. And if you hit Control P, that's kind of what the map looks like. Now I got to find her token. Looks right. Control P. So that's what she would see. Which doesn't look right. Hold on. Yeah, it looks a little goofy, but there's a bunch of lighting here that looks off, but excuse me. So, yeah, that's pretty close. So there you go. So this is she goes in. There's some lighting going on in here. So I'm going to take her off the combat tracker for the map for the moment. So this is what it looks like when her lighting isn't interfering with the current. Yep. And now I'm going to add these little candles. I forgot about those. So I'm going to go back to the lighting mode. And I'm going to select the add light function. And I'm going to go to candle. And I'm just going to click on each one of these little yellow spots here. And there's the candle light. And you can even see the flicker here. That's pretty nice. Okay. And then if you want to get rid of the lights from that, you can do that by individually turning that off. So let me turn off that, whatever that is. What is that? It must be those. Yeah, that's the lamps from outside. Might want to change those because that's not exactly what I want it to do. Maybe I'll just turn those into torches. That might be a better idea. But nonetheless, that's basically how you do the lighting. That's pretty much what you have to do with a map that doesn't already have lighting or something that you're going to be adding to your campaign. Well, hopefully that helps you guys out. It's basically just a work in progress. I'm just learning how to use the tool as I go, playing around with it. You have to put your time in. And when you are using this tool, you want to make sure that you get familiar with what it can and can't do. A lot of people want instant satisfaction. You can't just flip a switch and hope it works. You actually have to do a little work. So make sure that you put in your time and learn the functionalities. I think the biggest mistake that we make is switching between the selection tool and what you're working on. I know better and I still do it. So that's something you got to get used to. But there we have the water and everything. So let's go back to play mode And I want to change the outside lighting because it looks too dark. So I'm going to go back to like a daytime thing. So here's the ambient lighting, and it looks like, there we go. That's what was goofy. Okay, so it wasn't on this whole time. So that's why I was getting those weird shadows. So in player mode, that's what it looks like. That makes more sense. Okay, so right now it looks like it's ambient light coloring of dawn. So let's go with sunlight. The sunlight is just basically a natural light. So it looks good. And if you want to go to dusk, it kind of has the sunset look. And you can change how far the shadows cast. So right now you can change the direction of the shadows. So if you want to come out like that, and then maybe the length of shadows you can increase or decrease as the time of day it progresses. And you can even change the color of the ambient shadow if you wanted to. I wouldn't mess with it, but it's up to you. And then of course there's moonlight, where it's, you know, not completely dark, but it's getting there. And that's basically what you got, is some ambient lighting now. So that now it works. I didn't realize that was turned off, so that's why everything looked kind of weird. So now that you need to go into play mode to check that. So I'm going to bring the token back out from the combat tracker to test everything out. So if I bring her back onto the map, she has a lantern. So I'm going to take the lantern and turn that off so we can see all the different lights. So yes, there's the two lights are on the front porch. She opens the door. It's dark. Go in here. Looks like I turned off the candles. So if I go to this area here where it says lights and turn that on, I'm going to lock this too. So you can turn those on and off as you need them. There we go. So there's the candle light, and you can see the flicker from the candle. So I think she's going to go sit in her chair by the bearskin rug. She's got her feet down on the floor. She's been walking around all day. She's got her little gin and tonic probably sitting there, or a glass of wine. Here's the windows. So let's see. They're open, or you could close the windows. I think that changes the amount of light that goes through. But you see the ambient light from the candle and the torches is bleeding out into the outside. If you want to make it pitch black, like no lighting at all, then that's what I had on earlier. So you turn that off, and that turns off all the ambient lighting. Or you can go into play mode, and you can toggle this to a permanent kind of player view. So this is what Angela as a player would see. You see the different lighting forms, and then here's the pitch black room because it has no lighting in it. So she's like, geez, I need a torch or something. So she's going to bring out a candle. So I'm going to take the effect itself and pull a candle and drop it on her. And now she has a candle so she can see where she's walking. She sees these drag marks on the floor, and she goes, comes out here and goes, oh crap, if I didn't have this candle, I would have fell in that pit. So if she falls in that pit, she can see what's in the pit, but she can't see outside of it. And in order for her to come out, the game master has to hold down the shift key and move her out of the pit. That would simulate if someone rescued her or if she found a way out. So this is what it looks like with her candle on inside the house. Outside the house, I think it's dark. Let me check that. So lighting and ambient lighting, yeah, it's dark out. So it looks light, but that's moonlight. And then it's also got the light illuminating from these torches and stuff. So, and here's all the shadows casted from the building. And let's go take a look at that water. So I want to change the time of day to, let's go with dawn. And let's go to play mode. And I'm going to toggle off this. Now I'm going to put that back on. And let's get her to go back outside. And I shut the door so that the light doesn't come outside. she goes. And these are natural shadows that are cast from the objects. So she can't see through the house, the trees. So that's kind of good. Let's take a look at that water, see how it looks from here. Oh yeah, so there's the movement on the water. And like I said, I put a pit on there, so if she falls down, she's stuck in that water. She can't get out, and she can't see above the cliff. So again, I have to hold down the shift key and drag her out. That way it's not stuck in there. There we go. In a nutshell, that's basically most of your functions for Fantasy Grounds. So it went all the way from building the line of sight all the way into the lighting. This is the final touches. You want to get all your layers placed first. And one thing I did not cover is adding assets to the map, so I'll do that really quick. So I'm going to go to the layers mode, and I want to get out of the lighting mode for right now so we can see what we're doing. So there, and we want to go with, that's play mode. So I want to just turn off that for right now so I can see what's going on. And now what I'm going to do is just grab some assets. So I'm going to go to an asset folder here, and I think I want to grab her a table or something, a little table to stick on the side. So I'm in images, and I'm going to search for table. I'm pretty sure I have one somewhere. Okay, so here's a little round table. Let's see if I have any others. I was kind of looking for a square one, but that's okay. There's a cook's table. Yeah, hey, what do you know? I'll put that in there, maybe. What else do we got? Okay, here's some of, this looks like something that Kris would have done here. Okay, so I'm going to put this little desk here. So if I double click on this, it gives you a preview. Yeah, this definitely looks like a Kris thing here. So what I'm going to do is use that asset. So now that I have an idea what it looks like, that's the preview. I'm going to come over to the layers tool, bring up the assets again, and I'm going to drag the asset that I want. So it was this table that had like a map on it. Pretty sure it was this one. Yep. I'm going to drag that over to the tiles. So this is pretty big. So it says it's 17 by whatever. That's pretty good size. So I really want that thing to be like, 2 by 1 or something. So I'm going to go 2 and then 1. And I turned off the aspect ratio. Probably should leave it 1 by 1 or 2 by 2, because it'll clash if I don't do it right. Okay, so I'm scaling it where it wants, and now I'm going to click on the map. Yeah, and that's why I went for 2 by 2. So there's your little table. So if you want to move that now, you don't click again. You have to change to the layer selection. And then if you want to rotate the table, which I'm going to rotate it to the left, you want to make sure that you're clicked on the asset here in the layers. Then you just click the arrows, and there you go. And then you just click inside here and move it to where you want it. There we go. Maybe I'll move it to a different part of the house so it doesn't take up so much room. Again, I can flip it around where I want it. I think I liked it right there. And then if you don't like it where it's placed, like maybe it's not big enough or square enough, you can unsnap it so it doesn't snap perfectly to the grid. And you can kind of shuffle it around for some half squares here. And then you can use the arrow keys to move it if you want. So I think this is just an artifact of how big the item is. And then if you want to shrink it a little, you hold down the shift key and you drag the corner and you can kind of rescale it. So there you go. And then it's at 1.4 now by 1.4 instead of 2 by 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn back on the snap to grid, go to play mode. Now you have this nice little table here. It's a rug with a little table sit here, and there's a chair. So I'm going to flip that around because it doesn't look right. So I'm going to go back to the layer mode, make sure I have that asset selected, and I'm going to flip this around to where it makes sense. And there we go. So this is her chair, and this is her table. So there's the chair, the rug, there's the table, and I might want to go with 1.5. And that brings it right where I want it. And then if I unsnap it, there we go. Maybe even 1.6, maybe. Yeah, I think it's good. So there's your little rug and this. And then you could take the coloring tool and slightly cut down on the alpha so it kind of blends in with the map a little bit more. It's not quite as crazy. So now that looks like it's more part of the map instead of just being one big solid object. It kind of fades in with the rest. So if there was a candle on here, I would do that too. So let's put some assets back up, and let's look for a candle or a lantern or something like that. How about a lamp? Candle might be too hard to, yeah, so there's some lamp oil and a lamp here. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop that onto the table. So you just take this and drag it onto the tile. At this point, you would orient it where you want it. So if you want it to be slightly turned one way or the other, you could do that. And it's 1 by 1. So I'm going to go 0.5 by 0.5. That way it's, yeah, there we go. So there's your lamp. And now I'm going to take the alpha and kind of turn it down a little bit so it actually blends in with the table a little bit better. And it's kind of next to the map and the letter. I think this is a stamp here. And then if you wanted to add the ambient lighting, go back to lighting. We're going to go to the add light tool, and we're going to pick a preset. So in this case, this is a lamp. And then we're just going to click on the center of that. And now you have a table with a lamp. So now I'm going to go ahead and go back to turning this stuff on and see what it looks like. So for player, yeah, see that's, so you have to open the door and let her in, and shut the door. And then I'm going to turn off her candle. So yeah, she has ambient light around the, because of this torch. But she also has this light coming off this lantern too. So really cool. So there you go. All right, I think I've done enough. I'm going to lock the map and just leave it just like this and close it. And I'm going to continue working on this module until I get it figured out. So hopefully that helps you guys out. Well, that's pretty cool. I made that table. Yeah. It's fenced. Yeah. So anyways, that's how you use the map tool. It's really a basic thing that I showed you. There's a lot more advanced things you can do, like adding more layers on top and that sort of thing. But I think that gives you a rough idea of how to get started with that. So again, I'm going to be teaching this class along with Windrunner and Blue Scion. We're all going to team up and work on teaching this class as much as we can. And in the meantime, I'm going to keep building this module.